So the big tax question is this: how do wealthy people keep their money working for them when selling their business, real estate, or other highly appreciated assets without paying hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in tax? What if we, as business and real estate owners who have poured blood, sweat, and tears to growing our wealth, and who didn't hire expensive tax attorneys and CPAs to map out an exit strategy, knew their secrets? Instead of recreating the wheel, why can't we just model the way they deferred 30 to 50% in tax, paid off debt, funded their next business dream, and most importantly, leave a financial legacy to give to the causes we believe in most? What if their secrets weren't complicated at all, and you just need a guide who is a few steps ahead of you? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Brett Swarts, and welcome to Capital Gains Tax Solutions. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Build It to Billions podcast, where we guide successful entrepreneurs and investors on their journey from millions to billions. We believe the key to scaling your business and compounding your wealth starts every day with the mindset and practice of stewardship over ownership and applying billionaire biblical principles. Our ultimate goal: to help you scale and compound your wealth and life so you can give more or all of it away to help MVPs. I'm your host today, Brett Swarts. In every episode, we feature some of the world's top entrepreneurs, millionaires, and billionaires. They share their principles, values, secrets, and wisdom, providing each of us with the insights we need to reach the next level of faith, success, and impact. I'm excited about our next guest, originally from Poland and then California, now in St. Louis area. She shines in the Bitcoin space as a top-rated podcast host, influential educator, employees media commentator, as a leading women host at Bitcoin podcast, Coin Stories. It's a deep, engaging dive into the revolutionary Bitcoin network and how it intersects with global economics and technology trends. So much more. She's previously had award-winning TV journalist and investigative reporter. I'm really excited to bring onto the show Natalie Brunell. Natalie, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And for our listeners to get to know you for the first time, and to give us just a little bit more about your story and your current focus.
Sure. So I am originally from Poland, first generation. My family moved in pursuit of the American dream. I watched my parents work really, really hard growing up. It really influenced me. I wanted to achieve as much as I possibly could to justify their sacrifice. And so I went off to college in order to pursue a career in TV journalism with the intent of, being the next Oprah Winfrey or Barbara Walters. And then I watched my parents lose everything in the great financial crisis. And that was an inflection point for me. I entered into the field of journalism right after that, and I had a seed planted. I was frustrated that it felt like the American dream was no longer within reach. I felt like the system was broken, but I didn't really know why or how. And I wanted to pursue and hold the powerful accountable. So I started my journalism career, not knowing that I was really in search of something called Bitcoin. Bitcoin was coincidentally released at the same time during the great financial crisis. And in 2017, I stumbled upon it while I was a reporter in Sacramento, California, covering a state legislature there. And I started to just go down the rabbit hole and learn everything I can. I realized that I knew nothing about money, how it was created, what money printing was, how our banking system worked. And that was a really humbling experience. And I realized that our financial system is really what's broken, and Bitcoin is the best solution that's available. So I turned my focus from journalism and investigative reporting to education on Bitcoin. I host my own podcast. It's called Coin Stories. And I'm super grateful to help people understand that this is the most empowering tool and piece of technology that they can embrace in their life.
I'm really excited to dive into this. By the way, talkingbitcoin.com is a place you can learn more about Natalie, talkingbitcoin.com. Before we dive into the show, which is going to be learning really how Bitcoin is going and is changing the world, and how you too can be a part of this revolution of freedom and transparency and accountability. I do want to take one other step back, Natalie. I believe we've all been given certain gifts in this life, and these gifts have been given us to be a blessing and help to others, right? So what was Natalie's superpower? Growing up, what is the thing you feel like you were just naturally really gifted at? And how does that help how you help and bless people today?
I think that would be a natural curiosity and love of learning. I think education is a really important way to empower ourselves. And I'm a really big proponent of equal access to education. because from that, I think that we can motivate ourselves to accomplish really anything. And that's what the American dream stands for, right? It doesn't matter where you come from, what your financial status is, but you can pursue your dreams and make them come true if you work really hard, if you're a good person. And I am really grateful that I ended up down this path, because I think that it really is our duty to help people, to help others. When we are in service of others, I think that that is when we're truly fulfilled. And I think there's nothing more important than educating people on how this financial system works, so that they can, again, empower themselves, make their own decisions, and hopefully be able to finally save for the future, which we really haven't been able to do, especially not the middle class, the majority of people, in the way that they once could. And that's really because our financial system is so broken and benefits the few at the expense of the many.
Okay, this is great. I think this is really key, right? Equal access of education. And I think that's going to be the focus today on Bitcoin. In fact, we're going to call it Unlocking the Freedom and Power of Bitcoin, and understanding what it is and what you can do right now. Most of our listeners are very, say, higher net worth. They've had great educational experiences. Either they're street smarts, or just traditional education. But what would you say is the number one secret, right, when speaking to maybe the person who knows Bitcoin's here to stay, right? They know that it's the future in some ways, but at the same time, they've done mostly business investments, mostly real estate investments, right? So they're more sophisticated. In fact, they're probably already very well successful when it comes to finance. But now you're saying, hey, let's bring this as a major food group, or the food group, I think what a lot of Bitcoin enthusiasts or people would say. So what is the number one secret if you're speaking to that person out there who's listening?
Well, I think it is really important to meet people where they are, because I speak to people who live paycheck to paycheck, and some who have done extraordinarily successfully well in the world of fiat, in assets like real estate. And so you have to really kind of peel back the layers and better understand what it is that they're trying to accomplish, especially when it comes to investing. I'm not saying that real estate is not a good investment. In fact, I plan to own a house someday, because you can't live in a Bitcoin. But as far as investing your money, I want something that is scarce, that no one can just easily print out of thin air, and something that is secure and that no one can confiscate from me, that no one can seize from me, and something that I can really rely on 10, 20, 100 years from now. So let's take real estate, for example, and let's talk about some of the defects that I see when it comes to real estate investments. Well, first of all, you can't purchase a fraction of a home or a skyscraper or a beachfront property, right? You probably have to purchase the entire lot, or you have to purchase the entire building or the entire home. Whereas with Bitcoin, you can purchase as little as a couple of Satoshis, fractions of a Bitcoin. You have to maintain a property because it's physical, right? So there are maintenance costs every single year. You have to insure it. You have to pay property taxes every single year. So as you start going down the list, you see that there are ways in which your asset, your piece of real estate, actually depreciates in some ways in terms of your savings power, because you have these expenses that you have to pay for every single year. And then when you zoom out and you look at how much real estate is appreciated compared to Bitcoin, well, there's really no comparison, because Bitcoin is the best performing asset of the last decade. And so if you go down the list of anything from real estate to equities to gold, you see that Bitcoin really shines when it comes to the properties that people most want when they're saving money for the future. Again, I believe in personal freedom and financial sovereignty, so you decide what's best for your own portfolio. Some people are willing to take more risk and handle more volatility than others, but I think everyone should really take Bitcoin very seriously and decide what percentage is appropriate for their portfolio, because zero is the wrong answer.
Okay, I got this here. So scarce, secure, and rely on. So Bitcoin is scarce, it's not able to easily print it. It's secure, not able to be confiscated, right? And you can rely on it. It's going to be here for the future. And I like the way you put it. Real estate, you have to maintain it, the property taxes, let alone just like, I grew up in Sacramento, mostly in the Bay Area, both those places. I mean, it's harder and harder to own real estate in some of these states. It seems like the government is trying to make it harder and harder with rent control, with insurance costs going through the roof.
Yes.
It seems like they give all the power to the tenants, and you're like, I'm just trying to provide attainable, affordable housing to people. Yeah. But it's becoming more and more. So talk about this, the government's in one way, it's the reverse tea party that's going on with Bitcoin, right? We're no longer like counting, on the government to be responsible. I mean, they're so irresponsible with printing money, right? They're so irresponsible with spending money, and they're just devaluing the dollar, and they just have no accountability, right? Which just I feel like as stewards, as American citizens, as stewards, or any citizen of really any country, it's like if their government's not valuing the dollar, not valuing the currency, what does that show as the leaders for citizens that are trying to follow these leaders, right? Why should we have any confidence in them when they're not responsible?
Well, right. And really the movement for Bitcoin is about returning sovereignty to the individual. And at its core is the importance of property rights, that your property cannot be seized or taken away or inflated from under you, manipulated from under you in the way that fiat is. And real estate, I think, is a really interesting asset class to look at because of how the costs have increased far faster than wages have been able to keep up, right? So that's really the frustration of a lot of young people, that they feel priced out, that housing has really been financialized. Wall Street is able to gobble up all these homes, and it's turning everyone into renters. I'm a really big believer that home ownership is a core tenet of the American dream, because when you own something, you feel more invested. You invest more in that community. You care more about the schools. You care about the neighborhoods. You care about public safety. If you're just renting, if you're transient, if you're in and out, you're not going to care as much. And that has ripple effects that I think are very serious in society. And it shouldn't be so out of reach that, a home that was built sometimes 100 years ago is so much more expensive when it's dilapidated compared to what 2 generations ago paid for it. And so people have turned their homes into their primary savings vehicle. Why is that? I think people really need to start to question that, because the home has lost its utility value. It is now an investment. What if it didn't have to be that way? What if actually your money increased in value so that every single year or decade that you decided to upgrade or purchase something new for your home or get a new home entirely, that you were able to do that without so much stress? And the average person is experiencing the very opposite. Young people feel that they will never become homeowners, that their rent is actually taking up the majority of their paycheck. They can barely, survive or save for the future, much less for retirement. So we need something that will fix that. What will strike at the heart of this? Because again, if you really zoom out and you look at how much money has been printed, if we didn't expand credit by as much as we have over the last several decades, would homes be as expensive as they are today? Is that reflecting the real value of these properties? No, it's because the money has to go somewhere when they print all of it, and it tends to pool in assets like real estate and equities.
Yeah, I love the way you're putting that all together. And by the way, you can learn more about Natalie Brunell by going to her website or listening to her show, which is talkingbitcoin.com, talkingbitcoin.com. So, okay, so it sounds like the the scarcity, it sounds like the asset, it sounds like the freedom, it sounds like Bitcoin is the answer for a lot of these things. What would you say is the other big kind of big myth or big thing to help people overcome? Because I don't know what the adoption rate is at this point. What percentages of those that are investing in securities versus real estate are also investing in Bitcoin? Obviously, it's going up, but what are some of the things that you're encouraging people to say, like, hey, look, get in now, invest now, like walk us through kind of a strategy. And let's imagine you are at least a millionaire, you've got at least $1 million and you're a business owner, right? And you're an investor in real estate. What's kind of the wisdom that you would share with us on that?
I think the most important place to start is just knowing how early we are. A lot of people think that they're late to Bitcoin because they see the price tag hovering around 50 or 60,000, but it's an asset class that's worth about $1.2 trillion right now. And if you look at global wealth, it adds up to about 900 trillion that's divided in different assets, including bonds, which are several hundred trillion, equities, several hundred trillion, real estate, several hundred trillion, gold is just about 14 trillion. So even if we were to just hit, let's say, gold, right? Bitcoin strikes parity in terms of the asset class with gold. That is, several times higher from here that it's going to appreciate. So it's a really good time to invest now as opposed to when it is in the 6 figures or possibly even the 7 figures, which really legacy institutions that people have trusted for a long time are predicting up to, $1 or $2 million per Bitcoin in the next decade. So it's a really great time to get in. Again, a point I made earlier is you don't have to purchase a whole Bitcoin. Some people think that you have to purchase an entire Bitcoin or you're kind of out of the game. No, you can purchase little fractions. You can do what's called dollar cost averaging, set it and forget it. Set a certain amount every 2 weeks or every month that you feel comfortable with as a savings account. And don't look at it. You're not checking the price of your home every single day. Don't look at Bitcoin. Think of it as your 4, 5, 10-year savings technology, because that's really what it's intended for. And it has outperformed everything. And I think, again, the economic empowerment, I think whether you're wealthy or whether you're just, trying to make ends meet, is the most important thing. I think if people feel more economically empowered, they are able to have more freedom. They are able to start more businesses. They are able to pursue entrepreneurship or innovation that they've been, sitting on and thinking about. And I think that really helps overall society function better. And when we have a money that we can trust, I think it also allows us to cooperate. A lot of the breakdown that we've seen is because people feel so disenfranchised, they feel so frustrated, they don't know what to do, and that sometimes leads to desperation. Whereas now we have a chance to actually recalculate our base layer of economic activity with a unit of account that cannot be manipulated. That's what is so amazing about Bitcoin is everyone can verify it, but no one can change it or manipulate it. And I think people need to remember that this isn't a coin like in the physical sense that we think of. This is a protocol. This is the internet of money that you're investing in. It is truly the most incredible opportunity and asymmetric bet that I think is before any of us right now. And it will transform lives across the world for the better.
Awesome. I think I'm hearing three kind of main themes here, right? So money that we can trust. You said that first part of it, right? I also feel like money that is accountable, right? Money that can't be bought, right? It's kind of I don't know, a play on words, if you will, but there's just so much, in this world that is hard to trust these days, right? Yeah. Especially for the leaders of the countries that are running it. And so I couldn't agree with you more on all of this. This is really exciting. I'm wondering, as far as when you do sell, right? We recently helped a couple clients exit Bitcoin and Ethereum at about $13.5 million. One of them bought it for about 50,000, went to 5 million. She worked for Google and she had a huge windfall there. And she was looking at 54,000 a coin. This is before the last run up, before things kind of went back down to 15,000 a coin. So she exited. Now her key thing was the value of being able to defer the capital gains tax. That was big, but able to invest into a company, something that she could believe in and move forward. And it's an educational online academy. So talk to us just about the biggest frustration when it comes to those that actually want to exit, but have a large capital gains taxes, right? Maybe some strategies that you guys have thought about to implement.
I would just urge people caution, because sometimes you'll exit and then you'll never get back in at that price. So I say just be cautious when you make these types of decisions. Again, sometimes people need liquidity, and I totally understand that. But Bitcoin for me is my long-term play, where I do not plan to sell the majority of what I own unless I absolutely have to. In the same way that if you purchased, if you owned the Empire State Building, you probably wouldn't want to sell it. You'd probably borrow against it at some point, right? You would probably will it to your descendants. That's how I see Bitcoin, because there will only ever be 21 million. And I have met people through my journey who liquidated Bitcoin to make a big purchase, whether it was a home or a car or a special trip. They were never able to acquire as much Bitcoin as they had. And then they look at whatever they purchased and they think, oh my gosh, that is now worth, I don't know, 100 million in some cases, right? So just be very cautious about that. I think with other real estate investments, there is sort of a time it strategy where you want to leave at the right time, but this is not it. It's time in the market rather than timing when to sell your Bitcoin. At least that's how I feel about it.
Okay, no, I get it. Let me play a little devil's advocate here with you, right? So it also seems like there's a time to sell, there's a time to buy, right? And everything. It's like there's a time to plant, there's a time to uproot. So for the one client, she was a never seller. She's like, I'm never selling Bitcoin. And then she goes, but I have a dream about doing this. And I also didn't want to pay tax. So she was a never seller. She bought 50,000 to 50 million. So when she sold, we deferred $1.85 million of capital gains tax, and then was able to use all of the capital tax deferred to start this new dream, right? So not letting the tax tail or not letting the appreciation stop you from living life today.
Sure.
But the second part of this is if you could exit and defer the tax, what would that mean? But the next part is the estate tax and the debt tax, which this is so key, right? As of 2026, it's about 14 million married, 7 million single. And anything above and beyond that's going to be hit with a 40% debt tax. So let's say you're the never seller and you have $114 million of Bitcoin, okay? What that would mean when you're married, if you die, they would take 14 million is exempt, but the government takes 40% of that 100 million. Okay, it's due within 6 months of you, and if you're married, your spouse's death, right? This is known as the government's biggest mousetrap, right? So I also don't think if the long term is like, hey, I want to pass it to the descendants with the stepped up basis, right? But okay, that is capped at basically 7 million single, and it could be even lower than that. At one point, it was like $1 million. That was the exemption amount. And if you're I'll leave it at that. So, have you heard of that? Have you looked at that? Because to me, it's not just about cash flow and appreciation. It's about tax flow, because the government's looking for ways to take back and seize control for those who don't have the education in that piece either.
Yeah, I mean, I think that everyone should consult their advisors and their estate attorneys and their planners, because I think for that, it's a very personal decision for everyone. So I'm not the best person, I think, to inform people on what they should do in terms of estate planning. But I will say that with Bitcoin, there are so many companies now that do really make it easy, because some people feel like it's technically difficult, right? That there's this key, and what if you lose it, or a seed phrase? How do you pass it on? And there are actually a lot of really easy solutions for that you can make sure that people know how to access your Bitcoin. And again, this is the one piece of property that no one can ever seize or confiscate from you. So I think that that's really important, because in the case of other types of assets, including land and homes, there have been civil forfeitures, and anything that's physical can be taken from you. But if Bitcoin, it's literally, it can be a seed phrase that's memorized in your mind. No one can ever take it from you. So I think that that's really critical. But as far as estate plans and trusts, I just urge people to contact their financial planners and attorneys. And I've certainly done the same, but I think that that's more just a personal, private decision.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And if people want to learn more about what we do with that, you go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. That's what we specialize in, help people exit coin, real estate businesses, tax deferred. And so you can create and can preserve more wealth. We call it optimal timing, right? Sell high and buy when it makes sense, and with all asset classes. But okay, very cool. So what question haven't I asked you about Bitcoin yet that you're like, hey, Brett, like, I wish people would know this and would at least be asking this question that I haven't asked yet?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think that here in the West, we are so fortunate. Most of us grew up with the idea of maybe a 60-40 portfolio or saving for a rainy day. And there are billions of people around the world who live hand to mouth, who have it so much harder, who experience inflation rates of over 100%, and who have been really oppressed or financially censored. And Bitcoin is a tool that they use every single day in order to subvert oppression, in order to save in a currency that is less volatile than their own government issued currencies, that allows them to get paid for work that they're doing overseas immediately peer to peer, that allows them to save on expensive remittance payments and Western Union that take like 30% sometimes. So it's a really incredibly empowering technology that protects human rights as well. And I just think that everyone really needs to learn about it, because sometimes we're really privileged here and we forget that privilege, even though we've got a lot of struggle and things that we probably fight over and we wish were better. But there's always someone that is faring a lot worse. And Bitcoin has been really a tool of empowerment and savings and fighting oppression and fighting tyranny. And I think that really needs a spotlight on it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, more freedom and more impact you can make on people's lives, whether it be through, financial education, whether that be through currency that's not manipulated, whether that be through the ability to get affordable, attainable, housing to live into. Like, those are the kind of things that change the world and make the biggest impact for generations to come. This is why we're talking about unlocking, freedom and impact with Bitcoin, and unlocking the freedom and power of Bitcoin. So, did you go to the Bitcoin conference? Were you there?
Yes. I have been going for the past 4 years. I'm a speaker, and I love the experience because we get to reach so many people, and you have a bunch of very passionate Bitcoiners all in one room together.
What was the one or two biggest maybe ahas from this year's? It was in Nashville that you were like, man, this was so great. Like, I'm so glad I went. Anything that kind of sticks out?
This year was really a turning point because we had two presidential candidates talking about how much they're going to embrace and protect Bitcoin, which was really exciting. And I don't think it's right to put politicians on pedestals, but I think it's also a moment to pause and reflect on the fact that two presidential candidates are saying that they love Bitcoin, and they're almost fighting over who loves Bitcoin more and who's going to do more things for the industry. So I think that was really the biggest takeaway is we've reached an inflection point. Bitcoin is being taken seriously, and I think it's going to become a very bipartisan, apolitical issue because the technology itself is bipartisan. It's not political. It should be embraced by everyone, and that was really exciting to see. I think next year I would imagine that the president, whoever that is going to maybe make an appearance too, because Bitcoin is going to be possibly used as a strategic asset for the nation. Both presidential candidates that were at the Bitcoin conference this year talked about the idea of purchasing Bitcoin or moving Bitcoin from the DOJ's custody into the Treasury to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve that it's going to be used potentially to back U.S. Treasuries and really to help strengthen our economic footprint on the global stage, because right now everyone sees we're just printing money. We're spending, and we're putting the tab on future generations, and we're really impoverishing the majority of the nation, which is why people, I think, feel so fed up, because they see the people closest to Washington, D.C., the special interest groups, the politicians that are in office 50 years, they have enriched themselves, and everyone else is kind of struggling. And there is no accountability. Well, if you remove the ability for people to just be able to print money out of thin air and spend on whatever they want, then I think that will automatically shrink government and make it a little bit more accountable. And so I think we do need to return to a system of hard money, and Bitcoin being the best solution and the best option that we have.
Yeah, you're what's the words? You're making my heart happy, right? Because I feel like shrinking of the government is like, please shrink the government, accountability, right? Transparency, more, power for the people. Again, I call it a reverse Tea Party, right? How do we get more rights? How do we get more freedom for the citizens of the whole world, right? Not just America. And Bitcoin, I feel like, is the first one in a long time or maybe ever, right? That can truly try to bring that kind of thing together. Like, what do you think in the next 5 or 10 years? Anything that kind of sticks out? You're like, wow, this would be really cool if this would have happened. Any kind of predictions or thoughts or hopes with Bitcoin in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I really have a hope that we're going to come together and unite, because we all use money. We all interact with one another in this economic system that is now global, and we need a fair unit of account. We need to reorient ourselves into a system that is no longer manipulated. And I'm so grateful that we can peacefully opt into this new parallel system that exists so that we can start cooperating and building trust with one another again, because right now a lot of trust has broken down between people. And that's easy to understand when the money is so broken, when again, we just print money out of thin air and it goes to certain people and everyone else is kind of struggling to afford the cost of living. And so we need to fix that. We need to address it, because that's what I think is at the heart of our polarization and our divisiveness today. I think that people are turning to teams because they need someone to blame and they need a savior. And it's not going to come from any political party. It's going to come from addressing the green problem, the money issue, and fixing the money. And that's why I think that, everyone is eventually going to be sort of in the orange party. I think that it will help us come together because they will see that this is the one thing that if you embrace it, it will empower you. It will empower your friends. It will empower your nation state. It will empower your company. It will empower your enemy, but it doesn't hurt anyone. That's the thing is you stand to benefit in no way if you're against Bitcoin, but you stand to benefit a lot if you're for it and if you're for the people that are embracing this technology.
Yeah, I would say accountability, transparency, and freedom, right, empowers people, and Bitcoin is that tool to do that.
Yeah.
And the more you can encourage and promote and build systems and practices with accountability, transparency, and freedom. The biggest question is, what will the powers that be do potentially to limit the accountability, limit the transparency, limit the freedom with anything that we're doing? So that remains to be seen, but I'm hopeful too that this will be a big part of all of the things that are moving towards freedom. Cool. All that being said, are you ready for the lightning round?
Sure.
All right. Now I want you to know now, if you can go back to your 20-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget if you sat down with somebody besides buying more Bitcoin? By the way, I have a story for that. Everyone does, right? My good buddy, this is like New York Stock Exchange when it was like, I don't know, $1 or 20 cents or something, right? And he's like, I almost just like bought it right there. And he didn't do it, and the rest is history. But if you go back to your 20-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget? Make sure you tell yourself to do.
Well, besides buy Bitcoin, I would just tell myself to go for whatever it is that I want to try, because you'll learn so much more from failure, and you will never regret trying, but you will regret and wonder what if you don't.
Cool. And by the way, to that transition, you went from news anchor, right, to when we talk about real quick that little story, like what was the transition? You're like, okay, I'm all in, I'm burning the ships, I'm going for it. Talk about that moment for you to really step out and kind of really be an entrepreneur for Bitcoin.
Sure. I did not intend for this to become my career. It was really a hobby and a passion project. I just wanted to help educate people on Bitcoin, and I was going on my own knowledge journey, trying to understand it better. So obviously, I was trained to do interviews, and I love doing long form talks. Which sometimes when you work in TV, you don't get enough of those because you're always producing very, very short, 90-second stories. So I just started to ask people to come on this show that I created, again, totally as a hobby. I released it for free, and I was able to finally leave my job after about a year of podcasting just as a hobby and focus on it full time. And now it is my career, and I'm passionately, traveling around the world helping people understand Bitcoin, and very, very grateful that this turned into my job.
Isn't it neat? Like your experiences and everything that you did beforehand led you up to exactly where you're at today. You ever look back and connect those dots and be like, wow, like this is incredible how it all connected?
Yeah. So when I was younger, I heard a saying that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And so I, again, kind of didn't know that I was preparing for this role to be a spokesperson in a way for Bitcoin education, because I was doing the reps, right? I was reporting stories every single day. I was going live. I was conducting interviews. And then the preparation met the opportunity of learning about Bitcoin and really deciding that this is what I want to focus on. And so people say it's lucky, but really it was a combination of a lot of factors and a lot of work behind the scenes, because a lot of people really need this information, and there was a need for people who can communicate it simply. And so I'm really grateful that my journalism career helped prepare me for that.
So cool. Next question on the lightning round here. Now we're kind of back into it because I just had to get those two out. What are you most curious about right now? Like what is, and by the way, is there Ethereum or anything else like at all? Or is it like, hey, Bitcoin, for like nothing else besides Bitcoin? And then, well, would it be real estate would be the second if you had to pick a second? Like, what are you most curious about when it comes to anything outside of the Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I'm Bitcoin only. I started out experimenting with different tokens, and then I really had to humble myself and understand why Bitcoin, not crypto. So that's where I'm at now. I'm Bitcoin only. And as far as a second real estate asset, definitely a home that I would want to live in, not just have as an investment vehicle that I, flip over or have a bunch of tenants that I may or may not know inside. I really want like a dream home, and I think Bitcoin will help me get there.
That's so cool. I love it. Next question. Number one leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by.
Make the most of yourself, for that is all there is of you. I think it might be Ralph Waldo Emerson, but I love that quote.
Great quote. Number one book you've recommended or gifted the most in the past year.
The Bitcoin Standard. If you haven't read it, pick it up now. It was transformative for me. I've read it multiple times.
Cool. Number one way you're using ChatGPT.
Actually, I just use it for fact checking and just kind of, I'm curious about something and I type it in, but you kind of have to fact check ChatGPT actually, because I found that sometimes it'll punch out an answer that isn't even true. So beware.
Okay, cool. And then the last question, which is this, right? Which is kind of the thesis of the podcast, which is, we believe that we've all been given certain gifts in this life, and the gifts have been given us to be a blessing and help to others, and us to be a steward of those gifts, to be a blessing and help other people, right? So what does stewardship over ownership mean to you? And what's something that you like, hey, you have a big heart for maybe some of the most vulnerable people in this world?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that because, again, I think that education is so key. I think that now it is easier to access than ever through the democratization of information and media through the internet, and democratization of finance will be available through Bitcoin as well. That will empower people around the world so that they can work and transact with one another freely. So I think that that's amazing. But, going back, I went to a Christian college. I went to Pepperdine. And one thing that I loved about it is that from day one, from my orientation, all of the professors that I had were all about find your calling, find your vocation. It's not just what you do for money. It's who are you and how are you going to serve others through the work that you do? And that really left an imprint on me because, again, I think that so many people today are lacking purpose. And one of the easiest ways to find purpose is to figure out what you can do that is to be of service to the people around you, whether in a small way or in a big way. You could sit in a room and broadcast to who knows how many people, or you could help someone day to day, one-on-one. It's just really amazing what you get back when you give. And I think it's important for everyone to figure out what it is that their gift is. I think everyone has something that makes them feel like time is just, disappearing, and that makes them truly happy and joyful, and that hopefully gives back to others in some way. And so I think that I'm really grateful, and I'm more empowered and fulfilled than ever, because I really think that Bitcoin will help everyone. I think it is for everyone, every age, every background, every financial, social status. And it makes me, I wake up hungry every day to just share that knowledge with people. And I hope that people find whatever it is they're passionate about, and their vocation and calling.
Natalie, it's been more than an honor to have you on the show. I want to encourage you to keep using your gifts of curiosity and a love of learning and empowering people with education, right, to make a difference in this world with Bitcoin, with your tenacity to educate and bring people, transparency, accountability, freedom with this, right? It's such a cool thing to be able to interview you and to see what you're doing in a big way. Thank you for being on the show. And for our listeners who want to get in touch with you, would you mind one last time, what's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me. My DMs are open. I'm very active on Twitter at Nat Brunell. My show is called Coin Stories. It's on every video and podcast platform. And my website is talkingbitcoin.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalie. Also, I thank all of our listeners out there for listening to the episode of the Build It to Billions podcast. Again, we're on a journey with you as a successful entrepreneur and investor from millions to billions. We believe that the key to scaling your business and compounding your wealth starts every day with the mindset and practice of stewardship over ownership and applying billionaire biblical principles. Again, our ultimate goal to help you scale and compound your wealth in life so you can give more or all of it away to help MVPs. I hope you love this episode. I hope you love Bitcoin or more than you did before you listened to this episode. And I hope you start investing and diversifying into it. I believe in Bitcoin and I've invested into it, and a big proponent of it. So, but of course, because we're here at Capital Gains Tax Solutions as well, we want to unlock freedom in capital. And this is a great way to do that as well. Please take action today. If you have a big exit coming on, Bitcoin, real estate, business, you can pick up the book, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan, and have a plan in place to be able to defer the capital gains taxes and to reinvest back into Bitcoin, back into real estate, back into businesses, all tax deferred, but you got to get a plan. Go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. That being said, please rate, review, subscribe. Appreciate everyone out there, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Bye now.
You have just listened to another information-packed episode of Capital Gains Tax Solutions with Brett Swarts. We hope you enjoyed today's show and found it helpful. Visit capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to access the show notes and to access more resources. Don't forget to leave a review and join us again next time.